we can make a start with the welcome and introductions. Welcome to this meeting of Values and Ethics Subcommittee. If there's no, as far as I'm aware, no fire alarms planned, so if there is an alarm, the standard practice is out through the main entrance hall and down the ramp to the right towards the cathedral and meet adjacent to the cathedral. We'll start with a round of introductions. So if I can start with yourself, Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, Councillor Jonathan Packer, I represent Stockport Ward.
I'm Councillor Zoe Goodman, Filwood Ward.
And Councillor Andrew Brown, I represent Hengrove Church Park Ward, and I'm sitting in for the chair today.
Alison Taylor, Clerk to the Committee.
Louise Cordova, Democratic Services Manager.
Okay, thank you very much. Clark, do we have apologies for past weeks?
We have apologies from Adebola, the chair of the subcommittee, and I also believe that Councillor Dyer is running late and may not potentially get here until later.
Yes, Councillor Dyer had a clash of commitments and his previous commitment was overrunning, so we've been in communication, but he has sent his apologies for being late. Next, declarations of interest. And they have any interest to declare?
No.
That's the agenda? No. And then we've got minutes of last meeting. Is everyone happy with the minutes
There was
of last
an
meeting?
amended note to add, wasn't there, from
There was
the
the
monitoring officer. Has that been added to
So it's added with an asterisk and it's at the bottom of the minutes to make that amendment.
Could I check with that you've checked it and looked through it and it corresponds with what you've been informed?
Mostly, yes.
Thank you for that. Next we move on to public forum. So there have been questions and statements submitted. Two questions, two questioners, more questions. Now, the monitoring officer and the head of legal service aren't able to be at this meeting, so we will take supplementaries, but if there are supplementaries that are addressed to the monitoring officer or the head of legal services, we'll have to refer them on for a written response. Mike Aldry, if you have 3 questions, have you got a supplementary to your first question?
Yes.
Somehow I knew that would be the answer.
Yeah, sorry.
I want to clarify something. I think lots of our questions are going to be you're not going to be able to answer them. Shall we just go through them?
Yeah, if you can ask your supplementary, if it's not something that we can deal with here, we will refer them on to the monitoring officer for a written response.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, I'd like to know that the statement I made has been withdrawn without consultation by Democratic Services. Well, that's just an observation. Now I go on to my question. In his answer to question 1, the monitoring officer appears to be attempting to assert that there are 2 types of independent persons. Firstly, ones that are appointed at his discretion, and secondly, ones that are appointed under Section 28 of the Localism Act 2011. I refer members and the Chair to Section 28 of the Localism Act, which makes it clear that an independent person can only be approved by a majority of members, following due process set out in that section of the Act. There is no provision for any other type of independent person. I'm sorry, this is sort of essential to my question. It will help the monitoring officer answer it, hopefully. Subsection 8 of Section 28 requires specific criteria to be met by independent persons. Correspondence from the head of legal services to me, which was included in my original question 1, suggests that the monitoring officer and head of legal services have been using independent persons from other local authorities. Subsection 8 relates to relationships of independent persons with the local authority, its members and officers. So although independent persons may meet requirements for another local authority, this may not be the case for Bristol. So will the monitoring officer tell me how many individuals he and the head of legal services have appointed to the initial analysis and advice on assessment of complaints. These are the words that he's used in his response to me. Can he also confirm that he is confident that these appointments were made lawfully following all requirements of Section 28 of the Localism Act 2011? Furthermore, I believe that sharing my information with someone who has not been lawfully appointed to the member complaint process would be a breach of confidentiality and also data protection regulations.
Okay,
Thank you.
does that cover all your supplementaries?
I think it does, yeah, thank you.
Could I just ask, Matt, would it be possible if you can let me have that all in writing rather than me trying to
I'm more than
get
happy
a written
I'm
response
more than
anyway.
happy to
I
do
may as
that
well
for you, Alison,
get it
just
on.
for absolute clarity. Thank you so much.
When will you need it by? So just anytime?
At your convenience, you know,
Okay.
just get to me when you can.
But it should be something that's raised in committee, shouldn't it? So it should be the text of what.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you can provide that.
Yes, exactly what you're saying.
I've obviously read it from the sheet because you know.
We'll leave you a copy so you can compare them.
Okay, thank you. And we will address those to the monitoring officer.
Thank you.
Dan, you have 3 questions in as well. Have you got a supplementary to your first question?
I do. I've got 3 supplementaries. I'll read them out there. They're actually quite short, obviously. First supplementary question is to the monitoring officer. Please can you say in very simple terms why you believe you don't need to write a Section 5 report? That's the question. My second question, supplementary, is thank you for your response. To further my understanding, do you mean that you... So this is my question 2 was about conflicts of interest between the monitoring officer as Director of Legal Services and as monitoring officer. To further my understanding, do you mean that you've never encountered a situation where there's been a conflict of interest, or do you think it's just not theoretically possible for there to be a conflict of interest between the different hats you wear as both Director of Legal Services, Director of Legal and Democratic Services, and as monitoring officer? And the third supplementary, you might want to not accept because it's my question was.
Yeah,
Should I ask my supplementary? And you can
as your supplementary, and you'll...
Cool. The answer given says that the question is not within the remit of the Values and Ethics Committee. If I write to you as a monitoring officer, will you provide the legal notes or other document that describes your consideration of the public interest in keeping the terms of that deal secret?
Okay, nice. We'll pass it on.
Cool.
I would note as well, because it's noted in one of the answers to the questions, that there is going to be a paper on this subject at full council on Tuesday the 14th of November. So you know, if you wish to, you can.
I'm aware there's a paper coming. My understanding is it's not related to Section 5 report. It's related to the issue of the sort of broader issue of the independent persons, and you may want to submit questions and or statements at that forum. I might.
Okay, we then have two. We have 2 statements. There is a minute to speak to each statement. So if you know, members have seen it and or have read it, so if you can summarise it within a minute, if we can start with Dan.
Apologies, I made a 1-minute version and I've not left it somewhere. So yeah, I'd like to apologise for my outburst at the last meeting. It doesn't justify it, but I've lost my temper after the monitoring officer appeared to mislead this committee multiple times. One of the questions I asked was if a proposed rule had already been used. The answer the monitoring officer gave was evasive, in my opinion, to the point of misleading this committee. Mr. Aldreeve asked a question which the answer given in the meeting was factually incorrect, and we've now had an updated version of that answer, but that's the written answer provided after the meeting still is not is still non-responsive to the question Mr. Aldridge was asking. Mr. Aldridge was asking about what had happened in the past. The answer given was about events happening in the future. I think failing to answer, if that failed to answer the question to the point that it's misleading this committee. I've skipped something, but I can't remember what it was. We're limited in what questions we can ask. We can't do an effective cross-examination of someone who isn't willing to give full and truthful answers. While this type of evasive answering is not unusual for politicians, it's not acceptable for somebody who's meant to be both promoting and holding the highest integrity for this council.
Okay, thank you. And Suzanne, do you want to do it?
Yeah, a minute. I just want to thank you all for taking this seriously. When I've come to this committee, I've actually felt we've been listened to and respected. So I'd like to say thanks for that. It's obviously really important that we can trust responses we get from a monitoring officer and from the head of legal services. And as far as I can tell, no independent persons have been ratified by a full council since 2013. I think the public, are allowed to know who they were, are allowed to know their names, and it looks as if those names are being withheld. And I don't know why. But what will happen is somebody put in freedom of information or a complaint to the monitoring officer who won't accept it, and it then goes to local government ombudsman, and we're tying up loads of people. So it's an appeal. I don't know whether this group are able to sort this out so that we find out who these people were over the last 10 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your statement. Right, so that's public forum. Moving on, member development strategy.
Hello, Chair. Thank you, and thank you, committee, and the public, even though you didn't ask any questions. But that's enough. Today, I just wanted to put before you the work of the Member Development Steering Group, who have refreshed the strategy from last time, and essentially there haven't been too significant a change in terms of strategy because we were successful in obtaining an award for the member development of the last election, and wanted to just build upon that baseline. So we do think we operated a best practice member development strategy last time, but there's always more we can do. We have looked at feedback from the Member Development Steering Group, as well as a survey that was carried out of all members, and we have tried to make some adjustments. And we're also aware of the budgetary constraints of the council as well. But it was just to put this text before you before we go to design the strategy, to see if you had any comments on the approach. The main issue, I guess, is that we have acknowledged that actually members require a bit more space just after the election, but it will be challenging to stretch any induction period out, simply because we're entering into a new phase as well with a change of governance. So there's going to be a lot of information for new members to take on board. So just in terms of the strategy, I wondered if there were any comments from Value and Ethics.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to, that was sort of my main thing when I became the new council in 2021. The intensity of the training was quite a lot to cope with, and I happened to coincide with also starting a new job, so which didn't help me. So learning two things at once, but it was sort of how you can pace it in such a way that you get through the essential training in the right time scale, and then give people enough time to pick up the rest. Because I found that by the time I got to the end of it, I was like, can you remember the start of the training when you got to the end of the training, and maybe more refreshers might help. you know, and I do find the member briefings very, very helpful in bringing us up to speed, and yeah, it's been great that it's been kept on. So that was my main thing, was just the intensity of being able to take it all on board, and maybe we as party members can inform the candidates in our parties more that beware, if and when you get elected, you need to be ready for a big intensity programme, maybe be able to provide at least an outline of the programme in advance to candidates, even if just the shape of it is going to be X number of meetings, rather than the detail that I might run away. But, you know, just it will be this many meetings, and you need to factor those in, and you need to think about that and prepare for that. So that people are ready to, like, ask their managers for time off to attend things, to be able to fit things in, because I don't know the people. I was not aware about the intensity of training that was coming.
Yeah, so one of the clearest steers from the Member Development Steering Group is try and get an outline ready before the election so that candidates can be aware.
Yeah.
So that from day one, from the swearing-in ceremony, they have the information in front of them. They'll be able to hopefully be able to plan in advance and get that sort of agreement with any necessary stakeholders in advance. But that was a clear steer. So the other thing that we're hoping to do this time is to have the swearing-in ceremony and then leave the rest of that week clear. Okay. So that's a clear steer from the Member Development Steering Group. But then the following week, we're expecting it to start in earnest. One of the other requests was, could we have fixed days for essential training and ensure that the essential training only is packed into the first period. So we're going to do 3 phases. Phase 1 being essential and time-critical sessions only. Phase 2, maybe July to September, being those other things we can pick up that are required for induction and really key to your role, but not essential and time-critical. And then a phase 3, which would be in the autumn to winter, after we've surveyed all councillors, maybe in the September, to say, okay, take a breath, how did that feel, what do you want us to focus on for the remainder of the year? And then again, after a year of bedding in, we'll need to look at it again anyway. We'll need to look at how the committee model is working for everyone, and then hopefully get enough feedback from you all to understand, okay, what's really necessary for the final phase, and then embedding member development for the final 3 years.
You got anything?
Yes, thank you. I think that phased approach, which is proposed by the working group, is very sensible. Personally, I did find the induction to be quite intense, but personally that actually suited my circumstances. But I realised that it doesn't suit everybody's circumstances. I actually did 30 training courses within the first 2 months of being elected, so it was kind of 1 every 2 days. But I recognise that programme doesn't suit everybody. Everything was online, and I wonder if there might be scope. And that was, we were emerging from the pandemic at that point in time. It was the custom to do a lot of things online. I wonder if there might be scope to do some in-person training rather than having everything online. But I realise that doing it online is an efficient way of doing it. I know that some of my colleagues who were elected before I was elected found things like a tour of the city to be quite useful. The tour of the city that we had was actually online rather than an actual tour. But on the whole, I was actually very satisfied with with the induction, and I think it's to the credit of the council that they managed to achieve this Charter Award for Member Development from South West Councils. I think it was fully merited, and I was happy to contribute to that by producing a statement. I did think at the time that after an intense period following my election, it would have been useful to have some periodic refreshers. Because if you don't take everything in the beginning, then there's not always an opportunity to catch up on things that you've missed out. But as I said, the actual programme did suit me, but I recognise, because it was good for me personally to hit the ground running, but I recognise that councillors with other commitments might find that difficult. So I think that the phased approach which is proposed is sensible, and I'm very happy with the proposals of the Member Development Group.
Thank you so much. Just with regards to virtual aspect of it, so yes, that was a condition of coming out of COVID and a requirement, but the Member Development Steering Group have been quite strong in their proposals that we should be virtual by default if possible this time around. Now that's not going to suit everybody's learning style, which we recognise, but we also recognise that there's that balance between trying to get as much capacity as possible out of members' time as possible, and working online is probably that compromise. But again, it's really important for individual members to feed back so that we know when actually we just need to tweak this, and maybe an in-person session around certain subjects is going to be the right thing to do. So please speak among yourselves and feed back. If virtual isn't working for the essential days, maybe there's an opportunity to revisit and make sure that we do some in-person ones for phase 2, for instance.
I think that doing it virtually was a very efficient approach. As you say, people do have different learning styles, so I think it might be advantageous if there aren't some in-person options, but I don't consider it to be absolutely necessary. It is perhaps a nice to have, because people who prefer that style of learning would then have that option. And it's also an opportunity to meet your fellow councillors who have just been elected in an in-person environment. And that, I think, helps to build relationships. But I fully recognise that virtual means of delivery is very efficient, and in terms of being able to deliver the information to the people that need it. But it might not necessarily suit everybody's learning style. But as I say, I personally was very happy with the induction that I went through. It was quite intense, but I was glad to hit the ground running. But I did have the in terms of my time commitments, I didn't have the capacity to do it. So I think a phased approach is sensible.
Thank you. Just in terms of the refresher aspect, regular refreshers, one thing we weren't able to do last time because we were new to Teams, is record the sessions. It just wasn't available to us at that time. That is available to us this time. So if members do attend a training virtually in person, then at least then they can return to that recording at any time.
I think that would, in effect, sort of satisfy that requirement. I think it would certainly go a long way to satisfying that requirement.
One thing we are struggling with is the tour in the city aspect. How do we ensure that councillors from disparate parts of the city get a good overview? And we love the idea of gathering everyone together in a tour situation, because that means that people can meet, form relationships early, and and each councillor will be able to tell everybody else something about their area. It's a perfect scenario, but we haven't quite worked out how we can make that happen at this time, and we'll welcome any views from members to make that possible. But yeah, it's a challenge.
I know that previously, as part of the induction, councillors have been on a river trip, and you can see things from the river that you can't see from elsewhere. And you can see which where development is taking place. And I think with the Templewater development coming up, something like that might be helpful.
Yeah.
So thanks, Jonathan. Tony, good to see you.
My apologies.
Yeah, no, we passed.
With the bad time management by a third party.
Well, we recorded those earlier, so. I was just going to give you, we're on item 6, which you probably sussed by now. I was going to give you a couple of minutes to collect your thoughts and just sort of pitch in my tuppence worth, which, I've not got much to add to what Councillor Goodman and Councillor Hugger have said. Your point about giving candidates a heads up is something I raised in the last member development steering group, which I'm on a sort of job share basis with one of my work colleagues. But I welcome this paper, and I think it's it sort of builds on what we did previously, and I think it sort of takes some of the learnings from the previous round, and is quite comprehensive. I'm also looking forward to some chairs training, because I ended up chairing a committee by accident, almost without any formal chairs training, so looking forward to that. So when it comes around, assuming one is re-elected, of course, which is never a given. Tony.
Yeah, I think my comments, obviously the member development programme was put together after the last session, because it became clear there was going to be a big change in councils, and we're going to have a lot of councils coming in that were relatively inexperienced. Of course, this time around, that's further emphasised. We're likely to have another big change in councillors, with quite a few experienced councillors already in place and stepping down. And we also have to change to an entirely new model of governance. One that also, because of the way it works, requires decision making to be attended by a lot more councillors rather than a relatively small group, either in regulatory committee or in the cabinet. And I think one of my concerns is, because we are, as an organisation, we are responsible for a hell of a lot of public money. And it's not our money, it's the public's money. And it's vitally important that we make sure that when people are making decisions about how that money is spent, that they are informed, that they understand what is intended, what may happen if they do it one way or they do the other way. And there will be, I'll be blunt with whether we ever change the government or not, there are still going to be continuing restrictions on local government funding. So I guess my point is, one, how do we ensure that if we identify training that is needed, that we make sure that not only do councillors attend that training, but that we make sure they understand that training. And also, if they don't attend the training, that whips have a responsibility to remove those councillors from those committees before they attend. Because this has been a problem with a couple of councillors where they have been put onto committees. They've not even attended the training, let alone attend any of the committee meetings. And it's frankly just not acceptable. They've been elected to represent the city, and they have a responsibility to attend the training that's offered to help them do their job as councillors on the relevant committee. So I'll be interested to see how we can work with the party whips. And no, the Greens, we always keep saying we don't have a party whip, but that's just for voting. We still have a party whip for organising people, and all the other parties do as well. And there has to be a recognition of their responsibility to ensure that if they are putting people onto committees, they also have the responsibility to make sure they're committed to attending those committees, but also to doing any necessary training that's required. And I know that was a bit of a rant, but it's something I feel quite strongly about.
Yeah, no, it's really helpful because it was a massive discussion amongst both at a whips meeting and at the Member Development Steering Group, where it was discussed actually what is essential, what is mandatory, what are then the results or impact of not having specific training. And we came to the conclusion as a group that actually essential training are only those committees where there's a legal impact. So regulatory committees, that's essential, and information governance and information security are essential. Now, so the next phase is highly recommended, and the guidance for this is training that the party group leader expects you to attend, to do your role and have the information that you need to do your role properly and take decisions. So that's the second sort of band of training. And I think policy committees, which are the new committees, will fall into that category. And we will be working closely with the relevant group leaders to
Can
ensure
I just push back a little bit on that? Just because the policy committees will, as a committee, be making spending decisions. They'll be making decisions. So it's not like at present where we have a capital. I mean, obviously, I'm very proud of the work that scrutiny does. No, I have to say that because I'm chair of the top level scrutiny. But at the same time, we're not the ones making the decision. And there was a meeting yesterday at Boston in which one of my colleagues reminded me very forcefully of that and reminded the entire room about we're not the ones making the decisions. But when we move over to the committee model and we have those policy committees, they will be making a decision, and we may end up with situations where, I don't know how many people, I don't think we decide how many councillors are going to be on this committee, but let's say it's 9 and the vote is 4-3, and the deciding vote is by somebody who hasn't attended the same training as the others. I feel that there's a potential for that to then be liable to a legal challenge, because it's been decided on the basis of a vote by someone who has not completed the level of training that the other councillors have trained. So if I was putting my legal hat on, I'll say it's not, the standard of decision making is not consistent because the level of training provided to the people making that decision is not consistent.
So there's a couple of things. There's an opportunity for value and ethics as a whole to make a recommendation about where policy committee training sits on that scale. If it's not perceived that party group leaders expect you to attend isn't strong enough. But there's also a process that will be gone through, which I'm not sure has been fully fleshed out yet, but it's the briefings for individual policy committees. So on subject matter that is new to members, because you're not going to be able to get, what you will get is the decision-making process training. So everybody will get decision-making process training, but then it's the subject matter. So that will be required by individual briefings rather than training in the same way. So yeah, Value and Ethics has an opportunity to make recommendations about that sort of thing. And again, it's not written in stone. We will come back to you again, I'm hoping in March, with something more fleshed out around the programme. And maybe there's an opportunity again to come back with something more fleshed out. Yeah.
People those guys, because I won't be able to.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just wondering on, you split them into essential and highly recommended and recommended. Is it more like the highly recommended is more of an expected? It's not highly recommended, it'd be nice if you did it. It's like, we really expect you to do it.
If you want to be on that committee.
Yeah, that we expect, the whips to encourage their members to go, and we encourage them, we expect the members to.
My understanding, and I'm sort of bringing in from having attended one of the member development steering groups, was that was sort of the distinction. That the essentials were the things where there's actually a legal bar to, if you don't have training on planning, you can't sit on a planning committee. Whereas the highly recommended, it's more an expectation if you're going to be on particular, doing particular things, but where there's not necessarily a legal consequence of not doing it. Sorry, I mean, I'm happy, if we want to as a committee to sort of refer it back and sort of say we'd like to see a little bit more consideration given around consequences on that level, I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to feed that into when I'm on the subcommittee. When we're looking at it as it gets fleshed out.
Yeah, and I guess there's a difference between an expectation that if you're a member of a committee that will be making decisions on any of those that you have attended it, and an expectation for councillors in general to know about some of the stuff, isn't it? So then it might become it's highly recommended for people who
there's
aren't. It's always useful when you're going to go there and sub that you've got that briefing already, haven't you, on that subject matter? But yeah, we're going to be having to increasingly do that, aren't we? So.
Well, we have a situation with Osm where if we have to have a sub on Osm, then they have to come and have a meeting with me beforehand so I can make sure that they understand what's the background was. So we've had a new member join Osm recently because of the changes with the Lord Mayor. So we had a one-to-one session to basically, if you like, conduct them into Osm about the way we work in Osm and what we don't do at Osm.
And likewise, when people come on to audit, they're expected to have training with the internal auditor. Okay, so are we happy to sort of, we're asked to consider and comment on the paper. Time myself off my screen, but we're asked to consider and comment on the paper, and I think we've done that. And if Louise, you can take those comments away and just feed them back to the relevant groups and see if they can be fleshed up a little bit more. That'd be great.
Thank you so much for that.
Okay. I have turned myself off my computer screen, so I can't see the next item on the agenda, which is item number 7, and it's very overlapping. It overlaps a great deal, so we might not have much to say along with that.
So it was just to make members aware of the different work streams that are attached to setting up any member development programme. And again, we've built upon the types of resources that we made available last time. And it was just whether there were any comments on, again, the approach in terms of the types of resources that we're making available. Is there anything there that feels that is missing to you? Is there anything that you'd like us to bolster in any way? Or any comments in general?
I wonder then, and apologies if it's in there, I'm just scanning, I have read it, so just re-scanning it. anything about signposting to external sources of training and support. So, for example, I did an LGA, a couple of LGA programs which were incredibly helpful and useful. So whether there's something on that side of things, making use of resource beyond the council's itself.
Yeah, I don't think we've been explicit with that, because we've said something about the council's SharePoint site having information on it, but I think there's something to do there to be explicit about going to external partners, especially when there's free training.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know the LGA stuff's not necessarily free, but but there's also the Southwest Councillor, Southwest Councils, and there's a network for scrutiny members, there's a network for audit members, there'll be networks for all these new policy chairs that can get even not necessarily training, but shared experience and support.
Yeah, there's also the call centres as well, where there's the opportunity to learn from, and then sometimes that can be more useful because often the problems we face in Worcester are more so the problems faced by Nottingham or Leeds rather than by Southampton Centre.
Okay, Jonathan or so, you've got any comments on this?
No, I don't think it looks sort of perfectly sensible. I don't think I've got anything to add.
Okay.
The only thing I don't know, I recognise this is going to be almost impossible to do, but I'm going to say it anyway. So we got another section about feedback and evaluation, and that's mainly about the councillors feeding back to you and giving an evaluation of the training. What we also kind of need is a bit the other way around, a feedback and evaluation of the councillors themselves. And I realise it's difficult because it's not up to yourselves to decide whether if a councillor is elected, then it's assumed fit for purpose. But I do wonder sometimes whether there's the opportunity to do some feedback about whether they've taken advantage of all the opportunities that are in the council to learn how to be a better councillor.
So we will record all training that takes place. If there are opportunities to add additional support, because there may be reasonable adjustments that are required as well to support individual councillors, because everybody will come to us with a different background and experience. So it will be important to ensure that there is some sort of tailoring of the training and support available to individual circumstances. In terms of anything that says, okay, this councillor maybe needs additional support on top of that, then we would approach the whip to have a discussion. And then it is also for groups to work together to support the councillors within their groups and flag stuff to us as well if we haven't picked up on things where additional support would be beneficial.
Okay. Well, if there's no more comments on that, we'll consider it considered and commented upon, and that's the last item, so we can close the meeting. 44 minutes.